I did not actually sleep.
I wish, man. I wish I could just sit down and sleep.
Hello, everybody.
For
How are you?
hours.
We have a very snowy, although it's really pretty warm outside. I don't know where all the snow is going to go, but it's supposed to be. I noticed that in the 10-day forecast after tomorrow that our high every day is above freezing in the 10-day forecast.
Oh,
So,
really? I looked at it yesterday and it was like almost every day was below freezing.
Well, I don't know what you're looking at, but I like mine better.
I like yours better.
So welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. We have a short list of announcements for you today.
Okay. Project management training camp next week, Monday and Tuesday, and then getting organizational change, which is also project management, a little bit more about how do you love and support people through change and project management. And that is Wednesday through Friday, all next week. So the 2nd through the 6th. It is not too late to sign up for that. You can find the information on the products page on our website.
Wow, look at you. That sounded like prepared.
I fake preparedness really well.
I'm impressed.
The next chance to take classes will be June 22nd through the 26th. So if you are really anxious about getting some information about project management, you should do it now because it will be summertime before you can do it again.
Oh, summertime.
Yes.
Yeah, we do offer those classes 3 times a year. So if it doesn't work time-wise, there's usually a class coming. So reach out if you have questions about that.
I will be in Cleveland for the Northern Ohio HR.
I deliberately put the acronym on there so you have to show.
You're a dick.
Yes.
And I get to say that on Facebook because
Right,
you did
because
it.
it's your fault.
Okay, it's NOHRC, which really throws me off. Northern Ohio Human Resource Conference.
Nice. And you'll be speaking on, what are you be speaking on?
The killing the #1 toxin of teams, which is unspoken conversations.
I still really love that. We have got away from saying those things. I love that phrase. It's one of my favorites. And you'll be speaking to some kind of executive.
Yes, during an executive session for human resource executives.
That will be really interesting.
Yes. Rachel is going on the Abundance and Wealth Real Estate Cruise, March 12th through the 18th.
Yeah, knock on wood, coronavirus. I don't know what that's going to be or do, but I'm just ready to go to Orlando and do the whatever. Maybe we'll stay on land. I don't know, but cruises seem to be a hotbed for coronavirus.
Well, every virus, generally, just bad advertising for the poor coronavirus. If there could be, a silver lining,
and the GI problems,
and it's every time.
Food poisoning.
Why, we don't go on cruises.
So yeah, it's a wealth and abundance cruise, and it's really cool. There's actually a program on the cruise. I think on days that we're not in port, there's programs on wealth and abundance around real estate and leadership. And so if you're looking for a last minute chance to catch a communicable disease.
Now, that would be a funny advertisement. We should do fake ads and put them on our Facebook page.
Amazing.
That'd be hilarious. Put that down as a goal, Shelley.
Right, fake advertisement. I love it.
If you're looking for an opportunity to get last minute opportunity to catch a communicable disease,
sign up for the cruise.
Call us today.
But but it will be really fun. There's no additional cost to attend the conference. It's only the cost of the cruise, which for an inside cabin is not really a huge amount of money. So if you're interested in jumping on a cruise, let us know. Maybe Shelley can put the link on. I see her nodding out of my peripheral vision. She's going to put the link in the comments just in case you want to take a look at what that looks like.
Okay. That is all.
That is all for now.
That is all for the announcements. All right. So the weekly planner.
But we should also say that the second half of March is spring break for our kids, and we both have holidays on the calendar. And so March is going to be pretty crazy. So throughout March, it will be a miracle if we are in the same. I don't think we're both in the same room on a Wednesday ever next month. Maybe the 11th. But I think you're gone to Cleveland that day. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it will be one or the other of us all March. So we'll both see you in April
It might be Shelley because she just had a couple of really good ideas.
That's
and
right.
She might have just earned herself a spot on the live show.
A guest spot on the live show, because I think we're both literally out of communication a couple weeks, so we'll have to see what it looks like. So thank you for your patience.
I could be persuaded to do it up from the beach in Corpus Christi.
Okay, well, that's true. You do like to have the unusual locations. I could do it from Moab too on that day.
That would be cool.
So that'd be fun.
All right.
All right.
Don't mind just a sneak peek
Just
into what our
chatting.
brains look like. Yikes. Okay. Anything else? Announcements wise you can think of?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
That's good.
Weekly planner quote. If you are a leader, culture types will give you a light bulb insight to not only your own preferences, but also those of your team. The weekly writing prompt, draw a personal values crest. See our GM's example, which is right here. Shelley drew this when she took a class that I facilitated, I don't even know, last January.
Mm-hmm.
It changed her
That's so
life.
cute.
Changed her life so much she works for us. Like, how cool is that?
All right. I like your little. I like the fact you have a cat. Do you have a cat without a tail?
They're both cats. I'm not
Oh well, you just have a tail
Sophie's
on.
got a tail. She doesn't have
Ah,
She's a
okay.
Sphinx.
See, I knew there was a reason.
Okay, we should tell them. Okay, so a values crest is an opportunity for you to really think about who you are and what makes you who you are different than other people, specifically around what's really valuable to you or what you value in your own life. And so Shelley's are family and friends, help others who can do nothing for you. That's one of her values. She lives by that, let me tell you, hard. Environment and sustainability, and then to always be learning, traveling, experiencing new things. So that is kind of, we'll talk a little bit about why that's important for today in the topic today. And there are more detailed instructions under the group files, and click on creating a value statement that sticks. It's a PDF. So that will tell you how to
She's
use.
even got attached files and shit.
How do you create your values crest? What does Herbert have to say?
Oh, he's ranting a little bit about the coronavirus, but he apologizes at the end, so we'll let it go this time.
All right.
All right. So what you got the question somewhere?
I do have the questions.
All
We're
right.
talking today about pivoting
Oh
and what you should be how you can be preparing yourself if you're pivoting in your career. So how do I prepare for a career change? If you caught Rachel's most recent article in Forbes, you may be thinking about this topic. So if you Google Rachel and Forbes, you'll find lots of things. She writes for Forbes. We probably owe them an article or two.
Yeah, pretty much every month. I could be contributing an article.
Okay.
But I'm a chaos person. I do have some ideas though. We can talk about that later.
Okay. Do you want to
Some good
go
ones.
most interested question to least interested, or
Do we have an add-on? No, these are all Rose Group
no?
ones.
That's it.
All Rose Group.
Well, yeah.
Why don't you read the question? Why don't we start? You put them in a logical order.
Oh,
I think
fuck.
then.
You always give me
sorry.
this job. Okay.
Sorry.
Pause. Be quiet. I have to think. Oh yeah, don't swear.
Don't say the F word. Well, what I guess I can give you the little summary of my Forbes statement if you want. I don't know how it fits in, but basically the question was, it was the pivoting one. I was thinking about the going back to work one. I don't remember what I said then.
Okay.
Sorry, false
All right.
alarm.
So the first question, we'll go in this order. How do you know it's time to change careers completely or find a different career path?
That is a tricky question because for order tolerant people, I think adjustments that are small feel more doable and are more and really do more around that sort of feels like out of your comfort zone. So it's kind of a trick question in my mind because I think when you're an order tolerant person, incremental change feels like really big change. When you're a chaos person, then you might go from a skydiving instructor to aerospace engineer, because that makes sense to you. And so I think that for me, from a job generally, when it's time to leave a role, I always have a rule that 90% of your job is work and 10% of your job is fun. And if the 10% of your job outweighs the 90% of work as from like an emotional happiness perspective, then that's a good job for you. And as soon as that 90% of work overwhelms any kind of fun you might be having, or maybe there's no fun left, or that 90% becomes 100, then it's usually for me time to think about another role. What do you think?
I think that.
I think you should have brought me something from Cityboro.
Yeah,
That's what I think.
you were on the phone and things, and I didn't. I'm just wasn't thinking that kindly today. Sorry.
It's okay.
The advice I give to people that I think even I've been challenged a lot, I think, by order tolerant people about this advice, but it does work for, I think, everybody. Just depends on how you want to employ or deploy it in your own life. But if you're miserable, don't be miserable. Like, figure out how to not be miserable. That might be a new job. It might be a new role within your organization. It might be standing up to somebody who sort of has their thumb on you at work. And so I think for order tolerant people, it's like, yeah, haha, that sounds nice. I'd love to be able to do those things. Mm-hmm. And so I think, yes, I understand intellectually that for some people, it's not like you just say, oh, well, look at the time. I guess I'm going to go get another job.
Right.
You have to, the very first thing you have to do, especially if you're order tolerant, is allow yourself to start thinking that you are miserable. Or maybe you're not miserable. Maybe you're unhappy or unsettled or uncomfortable or whatever. You have to allow yourself to start thinking about that so that you can sort of explore why that is really, so you can decide what better options would look like. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of times we just say, gosh, I'm miserable and I don't feel good about my job. And then you go get another job, but you don't really think about what's actually making you miserable in that first one. So then you're miserable because you're just doing maybe what you know, instead of trying to figure out what you want to do. So I think that's the first, that's anyway, was always my first indicator.
I love that. I hadn't really thought about that in that way before, but I have thought about it in a lot of times when I'm finally ready to leave a situation, a role, a relationship, or whatever. It's usually because you can see yourself in a role that you can see your life being different. So Meg's comment about being able to see differently or allowing yourself to see differently, I think is really key, because I think as long as you can't visualize yourself in a different way or in a better place, it's very, very hard or impossible to change your circumstance. So that probably will get to another question here. So I don't want to say too much.
I think too that this would be a good time to talk about or think about the values crest. And so if you think, gee, sure, that's good advice, but I don't know where to start about how I'm miserable or why I'm miserable, maybe start with your values crest and figure out, maybe that family is one of your key priorities or key values. And maybe you're in a great job that allows you all the time you need, in your life to be with your family, but maybe you're around people who don't have family. And so they don't really value the hey, I got a sick kid or whatever, and they're kind of rolling their eyes every time you gotta, you miss a day of work or something, or have to leave early to take a kid to a dentist appointment. And that makes you feel like this is not, I feel bad. I feel guilty about my own life. So a fit in a role or in a job has a lot to do with not just the actual job, but also the environment and the culture that you're surrounded with in that role. So doing your values crest will help you start thinking about what you might like instead.
Or what questions to ask your next employer. That was one thing. I had a young man who's a welder, and his job, he got into a company that had a lot of drug issues, and he's not he's a really clean cut kid and doesn't even drink alcohol. And he did not know how to even begin to connect with people that have that challenge. And behavior was crazy. And anyway, it was really a bad fit for him. And so he asked me, and he was just so miserable. And it was so sad. And I felt really bad for him. And he said, well, what do I do for a different job? And I said, be sure you interview the place you're going to make sure it works for you. So, what kind of people do they have? Are they happy there? How long do people work there? Why do people leave? What's your accident rate, your safety rate? Those kinds of questions to not only, it'll impress the hell out of whoever you're interviewing with, but it'll also protect you against making one of those jumps that Meg was saying about how you go from one job to another and then you're just as miserable. Well, you have to kind of start thinking about what those values are and the kind of people you surround yourself with.
Okay, next question. I'm thinking about a career change. I feel overwhelmed and don't know where to start. Where do I start?
Ooh, this is the one I thought might come up.
Okay, say it. Go.
Well, for me, the number one, and I was just speaking to a college group on Saturday about this very thing, and they're all going and be starting their careers, and they're all technical people. Mm-hmm. And for them, the absolute number one thing when you feel overwhelmed is start figuring out, like, take yourself out of the tactical, this is what has to happen tomorrow or next week or 3 days from now. Think about 5 years from now. What life do I want to live? How do I want to be? Who do I want to live with? Do I have a partner or not? Do I have kids maybe? How much money do I want to make? Like, try to anchor in some future vision so that then when you start making decisions, you can start thinking about, does this really get me to where I think I want to be? And because what is tempting when you're in an innovation phase and that overwhelming too many options phase is that you feel really changeable. One day you love this idea and the next day you love the opposite idea, or the next day you hear something new and that sounds like the best idea ever. And so until you sort of anchor in what you want and incorporate some of those values on your values crest, it's very hard to feel like you're making progress, or you can even make a decision. That can be very paralyzing. And so it might be that once you anchor in that vision that you have for yourself and your family, then you can start closing off options. And that feels like it's a little less nuts. So in my, when I was fired or laid off from a job, I had a couple months before I had to actually leave the role. And so the crazy thing is I could do anything. Literally, I could have moved anywhere in the world. I could have done any kind, like probably a dozen roles, depending on which direction I wanted to go. And it was really overwhelming. And so what I decided was, I had a 5-year-old daughter, and I decided I wanted to stay in the town I was in because her dad is here, my ex-husband, and it's a good town to raise a kid in and all that. So once I decided I was going to stay in Spearfish, then I could cut away all of the thousands of possibilities and narrow it down into a few. So that to me really is a practical tool that you can use to make yourself less nuts.
You were talking about anchoring in something, and that reminded me that
actually
we have a whole concept about that. Mm-hmm. So on page 168 in the book, it talks about, well, it probably starts at 166 or 67, but we have what we call the GSD triangle, which is get shit done triangle. And in that, the 3 points of the triangle are passion, energy, and anchor. And then in the middle, of course, is action, because you actually have to do something if you want something to change. But a lot of times we, especially if we're making a decision for ourselves, we have a lot of passion and energy around that, good, bad, or otherwise. But we don't often, as Rachel pointed out, anchor ourselves in, what does better look like? What do I actually want to have happen? So using the GSD triangle as a guide for, okay, well, what is my anchor going to be? Then you could use the experience cube to kind of go through, what are my thoughts and feelings about this? What's my observable data? Why am I miserable? Or why do I want to change my career? Or, what factors are happening around me? And then you can sort of use that to start defining what your goals are. And then when you figure out what those goals are, you can decide that that's what you want to anchor yourself in. So There's a couple of tools that you can use
in the book.
for that.
And that's in part 3 in the book, has both of those tools in it. So
Yes.
check it out. All right. What other questions we got?
How did you guide yourself through a career change? What did you do right? What would you do differently if you had to do it over?
Well, I kind of talked about mine already. I think the one key thing is to give yourself a little grace, because I know about all this transition stuff, and it probably took me to really let go and start thinking ahead. It probably took me to really let go. It probably took me a couple months, and then to feel like I was going in the right direction, or I could actually achieve something, or start visualizing better and planning. It probably took me, all told, 6 or 8 months. And that's a long time when the bills are due every, once a month, right? Or that you've got to navigate some new situation, or you're staring at no income and all that stuff. So just really give yourself some grace and know you have to go through it. You can't sort of shortcut the transition of it, but you can use some of these tools to help you get through it faster and more effectively. So I guess that would be, I did probably a lot of things wrong, but at the end of the day, like, it's all going to work out, right? So don't be too hard on yourself.
My career changes were a little haphazard. So I think that I don't know. I don't like to think in terms of, what did you do wrong, because you always have an opportunity to learn, even if you actually did something.
There's no mistakes. There's just
like
learning.
Yeah. So I don't know if I ever did anything wrong, but I will say my career changes were all fairly haphazard, and that came with a high level of anxiety. And some of them were not, well, one in particular was it was a bad move. I had grass is greener vision, and that ended up sort of biting me in the butt, but I also learned a lot. So I don't know. What would you do differently if you had to do it over? For that particular job, I think the thing I learned was ask more questions up front about, what's the role? What are your expectations of me? And especially if you're going to work for a smaller company where you kind of get like this whole basket of stuff to do.
Right. They can eat you alive.
Yeah. I just didn't, my role was not super clearly defined. And so then there was a lot of, no, the owner was like, no, that's my job, but you can do this. And it didn't make sense in my head. I'm like, well, I have to have that information in order to finish this task. And you're gone 4 days a week from the business. So I guess just asking questions so you know really clearly what the expectations are from your supervisor or the business owner.
Yeah.
Okay. I know my culture type and my strengths as a professional. How do I use this knowledge to find a career that I am passionate about?
Well, I'm so glad you asked the question. One of the slides I use in when I talk to people about pivoting their life, whether it's in college or a full career professional, and to note we have 2 career professionals in front of you who have completely pivoted into something totally different. So we've definitely been there. But the cool thing is that there was a study in, I think, 2018 by Google, and they looked at all of their employees and who became a long time sort of ass-kicking, really critical team member that went up in the ranks and became very successful at Google. And they ranked all of the skill sets. And the number 10 was technical skill. Everything else was
out of 1 through 10.
Yeah, out of 10. So all of the top 9 were things like the ability to coach other people, the ability to listen, the ability to collaborate without your ego being involved. So a lot of times our technical skills, or our skills as a professional, I think is how that was worded, is what gets us in the door or aligns us perhaps with an industry or a company. But what will really make you thrive are those pieces that are a lot more intangible. So I think for sure, know that there's no wrong answer. I mean, I think the thing that paralyzes us, as I mentioned with my transition, is that there are 1,000 good ideas. There's 1,000 good options. And maybe that's definitely an optimist view. I mean, when it came down to it, how many jobs would I, if I stayed geographically locked in, how many jobs could I get that actually paid what I needed to be paid or expected to be paid? That would be a professional job in the way I wanted it to be professional with an industry that I had experience in. Not very many, or probably zero, because there is an aerospace here, right? And that was my background. However, broadening your scope into, listen, I can actually apply the skills that I've created over my career so far into many, many different ways, is, I think, something that is really a fun exercise, and that it actually will open your eyes to even more possibilities of things that you could be really passionate about.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed a lot, I noticed this especially, I've thought about it a lot, especially when I go into the classroom, like in a school, little kid classroom, and do junior achievement volunteering. And when you do the section for 6th graders and ask them, like, what do you want to be when you're older? And they have these like super specific, like, I want to be the person in the business who fixes everybody's lab coats, or I want, like a stitch, like, cause I love to sew, or I want to be the person who makes the chocolate chip cookie. Like, they give you these zany, crazy, off the wall examples of jobs that they want to have.
Okay.
And it made me think, actually, especially in this day and age of gig economy, where everybody can basically start their own consulting business, or proof, and also where you can work remotely. Think about the thing that you really, really are passionate about in your life, and see if there is a job out there that does that. Just because there's so many different opportunities. So I think, a lot of the things that we do think are fun end up being work somehow, right? Like, I don't know very many people, Quillen maybe, but I don't know very many people that would be like, I really truly would just want to be on a vacation for my whole rest of my life. You ask people, well, if you won the lottery, what would you do? Most people say, well, I would go volunteer at a place like this because this is important to me, or I would go do this thing or that thing. So I think, if you really think about what you're passionate about, there's probably a job out there that aligns with it. So don't limit yourself to, well, I have a finance degree, so I have to do these 4 jobs, because that's all there is for people with finance degrees.
Well, and if you're order tolerant, it might be that you have a finance degree, and so you don't want to go become a skydive instructor. But what it might be is that you have a finance degree, and maybe you decide after, looking it up and evaluating, maybe you want to get your CPA license. Or maybe you want to be a finance officer for a nonprofit that you care about. Or maybe, so you can really, if you're order tolerant and big change worries you, or doesn't suit you very well, there's still a lot of options within your zone of genius that you could really contribute to and actually find ways to thrive. Even though it might feel like a big change, your day-to-day, what you do could actually be pretty similar, even if it's a different industry or a different type of job. So definitely a lot of variability if you have an opportunity to sit and think about it. And I guess that's probably the biggest piece of advice we could give, is to be intentional about thinking about who you are, what you love to do. Give yourself a few moments to write down some things, and that, I think, will help a lot.
Yep. Okay, well, that's all.
Is that it?
That's all there is. There is no more.
Okay, awesome.
All right. Well, have a great rest of your week. Lead powerfully.
Change the world. Bye.
Bye.
I don't know where my cursor is. Oh, there it is.